let's get to the main event here.
Yes. We have
Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender. They go through a lot of artists, but the main one is Jerome Pena, I love his artwork. He's so great. Good. It is so good. This is basically, I think this is like right before the X-Men schism or pretty close to it.
Yeah. Obviously, this is whenever Cyclops and Wolverine were still talking to each other.
Yeah. So Cyclops and the mutants are living on Utopia, which is correct me if I'm wrong, like an island off the coast of California.
Yeah.
And so
I believe Professor X is still alive too.
Yes, yeah. A versus X has not happened yet. So Wolverine has created like an X-Men hit squad to go around and take out threats before they become too big of a threat.
Right.
Hit them, first. So the team is Phantom X and Eva, Archangel, and Psylocke.
Just Angel.
Well, yeah, Angel, but he could turn into Archangel. Deadpool and Wolverine.
And then Deathlock is added after the second part.
Deathlock, yeah, the cast does change. Especially if you keep reading, the cast will change some more.
That's what I love about this. So real quick, the reason I love this so much is because my favorite comic book, I've said this numerous times, my favorite comic book series is Suicide Squad. This is the closest thing that I've read in a Marvel book that reminds me of Suicide Squad.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The fun part for me is the moral dilemmas they get into, and like it's even affecting Deadpool, where he's like, "Wait, I can't do this anymore, guys."
First of all, they talk about the moral dilemmas, and then Phantom X is like, "No, I got it."
Yeah, but I really like this characterization of Deadpool. I mean, his jokes are still annoying,
right? But you definitely see that it's to cover up pain.
It's I don't like Deadpool when he's just silly for the sake of being silly. I like him when, if you really pay attention, he has a heart. He's trying to do the right thing, even though he's a maniac. And so Wolverine's he's done with Deadpool in the series, and he's like annoyed with him. He's like, just get him off the team. I don't want him there. And then Angel's like, oh, he hasn't, Wolverine's like, he's just doing it for the money. And Angel's like, he hasn't cashed one single check. It's like, wait, what? and then he calls an emergency meeting because, okay, let's get to the first storyline. They hear that
solution.
Yeah, Apocalypse is being resurrected, which happens all the time. It's a cyclical thing in the comics where Cable is usually the one who has to go in and kill Apocalypse. But they kind of got there too early, and Apocalypse is a little kid.
Yep.
And he's a sweet little innocent kid that they're trying to brainwash. The Four Horsemen and Ozymandias, they're trying to convert him to make him Apocalypse. And X-Force doesn't know that. So they go in guns blazing. We got to kill Apocalypse. And then I think it's Psylocke that gets there first. And she's like, no, we're not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really cool story. I think the Four Horsemen are really interesting. You have one of them that's like a Civil War drummer, and his like drum beat can give you different forms of cancer and stuff.
That's famine.
Yeah. You have like the geisha girl that has all the beetles eat your flesh and stuff that come out of her mouth and all that. You have like a minotaur that his hate will infect you. And then you have he's like a Persian guy, I think. And if he makes contact with anything metal, he can infect you with any disease possible. Which is not good if you're Wolverine and your bones are metal. So real quick before we get more into the story, going into this, it helps if you have a knowledge of X-Men comics. because this is pulling from a lot of different stories.
So here's what I would say, and I could actually say this about a lot, because so here's the thing, I actually had a lot of questions myself, but I think if you have a working knowledge of the '90s cartoon, you will survive.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the beautiful thing about Marvel comics is the way they are designed is you should be able to read the story and get the gist of it, but you should have questions and go, oh, I should go read this issue or go research this character and it'll make more sense. Which is why they used to have the little editorial box saying, see X-Force #1 or whatever from Stan Lee. That's the way the comic books were designed. And so when I started reading comic books in the 90s, if I wanted to know more, I'd have to go buy the comic books because there was no trade paperbacks back then. There was no internet. Now, if I wanted to know more, I could type in what's still FinalMonkey in the world, and it would tell me.
Keep in mind, I didn't know what was up with FinalMonkey in the world, and I got the gist of it just by reading it.
Yeah. I mean, the book does a pretty good job of it. The stuff with Warren and Psylocke being a couple, I mean, that's all from the 90s. This storyline's been there for a long time. Stuff with Psylocke and she trapped Shadow King in her mind for a long time. That was in the 90s also.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get back to the story real quick. So at the end of the story, they don't know, they're arguing about what to do about the little kid, and also FinalMonkey just shoots the kid in the head, and you're just like, what is happening?
And you know what's funny? So what I like about that is, so the only thing I've ever known about FinalMonkey is he looks cool. I have a FinalMonkey figure from Marvel Legends because it came with Nimrod and Psylocke in a 3-pack, and I've just always thought that his design was cool. I never knew anything about him. As soon as he shot the kid, that told me everything I need to know about him.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. I never really got into him during the what is his name? The guy who invented FinalMonkey. What was his X-Men run? Can't think of his name. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, it was Morrison.
Grant Morrison. Yeah, I wouldn't say Grant. Yeah. I wasn't a big FinalMonkey fan there. Going into this book, I'm not a big Warren fan or Psylocke fan, but by the time you get to the end, you kind of are. Rick Remender is really on point with these characters to make you care about them. He really gets in their head. Just great stuff. So FinalMonkey also has a deception power that he's constantly using where he can make you see whatever he wants.
Which they use that like candy
constantly. and it's funny because sometimes you're in on it, you're like, okay, yeah, he's using deception power, and other times you forget and they get you again. You're like, dang it, they got me again. Because people get brutalized in these comics. There's sometimes like, oh, these people should be dead. But yeah, FinalMonkey, another weird thing about him is he has like 3 brains that they don't really bring up here. It'll come up as a bigger deal as we get further past the Dark Angel saga. Yeah, he's just a weird. He's like a.
That's right. He did have 3 brains in Morrison, because I've read all of Morrison's. I completely forgot that he was in there.
Yeah, and so he's like, if I recall, he was like genetically created in the world. He's one of the Weapon X products, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. And so the world is a environment where you can control the flow of time and create and test things.
Weapon Plus, that's what it was.
Yeah. And so he's kind of made himself the guardian of the world, which is not a good thing. You should destroy that thing as soon as possible. And that's an ongoing debate about what they should do with the world.
Yeah. I feel I'm just making JoJo's jokes every time I'm reading Zawardo.
Yeah, so I reread all this last week to prepare for this show, so it's all kind of a little fresh in my mind. when I read it all back to back to back, I noticed they were repeating the final page over and over. So the scene where Phantom X shoots the kid and he kind of walks away and the whole team's staring at him. They do that again when Deadpool kills the father coming up and he's walking away. They're all staring at him. And then they do it a third time. When was it? When Angel kills the soldier and he's walking away, the whole team's staring at him. So they keep doing that over and over where they can't believe that he just did that. Which is interesting. So I'm kind of curious if that comes up again if we keep reading that image over and over. So after killing the kid, the team is kind of screwed up. They're kind of like, what are we doing? This isn't what we signed up for. And Wolverine's like, this is exactly what you signed up for. And they kind of don't trust Phantom X after this. Warren and Psylocke are in love, but she's having these what do you want to call them, these psychology sessions inside his mind to try to keep the Archangel persona in check.
Yep. You know what's funny, because this is so much like X-Men without you even realizing it, because there's also the love triangle between Warren, Betsy, and Phantom X.
Right, and Phantom X keeps making things worse.
Right.
Constantly. It's like if Phantom X isn't on the team, does it actually happen? He keeps poking the bear and you know, it just.
He is the Wolverine. Ironically, he's the Wolverine of this team.
Yeah. So the next storyline involves Deathlok showing up, and all these Deathloks from the future.
So let me ask you this: of the three, is this the least interesting one for you?
I don't know, because I've read Wolverine by Jason Aaron where they introduced this Deathlok character that shows up. This is not the same Deathlok from the 80s and 70s. This is a different one.
Okay.
And so I think if you've read that other story in Wolverine, this is kind of like the next part of that story.
Okay.
So I think you would enjoy it better if you had read that other part.
Yeah, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm just saying, like, of the three, like, of course, Dark Angel is like the best one, and so it's really between Deathlock and Apocalypse Solution. I actually, you know, I enjoy Apocalypse Solution more.
Yeah. And then I think this story with the father, it continues in Secret Avengers. So it's like weird. It starts in Wolverine, it goes to X-Force, and then it wraps up in Secret Avengers. So it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, is this the story that had the Reavers in it? I can't remember if the Reavers happened at the beginning of this.
I believe yes. I believe it was this one. It was either the end of Apocalypse Solution or beginning of this.
I really like that story with the Reavers, where Psylocke's kind of like, I can't face them again. Right. They really screwed me up last time. And if you've read those Reaver stories that Chris Claremont did back in the day, yeah, the Reavers were no joke.
You know what I also liked about this? This also reminded me a lot of, like, this just gave me Claremont vibes.
Yeah. Rick Remender was being set up to be the new X-Men writer, and then Marvel ticked him off and he left. And he's like, I'll never work for Marvel again. And it's a darn shame because he is awesome. His Venom series with Flash Thompson is great. His Uncanny Avengers is okay. It's kind of a sequel to Uncanny X-Force. It picks up a lot of, well, we get to Dark Angel. I'll talk about where some of those storylines go. But yeah, the Reaver stuff is great.
So you told me X-Force and then Wolverine and the Avengers. Who writes that?
Or you mean Wolverine and the X-Men?
Yeah.
That's Jason Aaron.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if that was also Remender.
So when Schism happens, and Wolverine's like, I'm going to train the kids, and Cyclops is like, no, we have to fight. It splits, and so Wolverine starts the Jean Grey school, and so you'll kind of, you'll see a point in the Dark Angel saga where it's like, oh, they start bringing up the school and stuff, and so then part of that story continues there.
Okay, so does AVX happen after Dark Angel, or is that
it's after?
Okay.
It's probably another 2 years until we get to AVX.
Okay. Is there an AVX tie-in that like kind of tips you off?
Not to Uncanny X-Force, but it's in Wolverine the X-Men. There are like 3 or 4 AVX issues.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, Deathlock Nation. We start seeing all these soldiers from a future where all the Deathlocks, everybody got converted into Deathlocks, basically, all the heroes.
Yeah.
And so they are coming back in time. They're trying to destroy the world, and what you eventually find out is that they're looking for a secret that Phantom X is growing inside the world that nobody knows about. And we'll go ahead and spoil it because we're going to talk about it here in a minute. He has made a clone of the Apocalypse Child, and so he's growing it in a simulation to try and see.
He's going to try to raise it. He's going to try to raise it himself and see if he can raise it better.
Correct. It's kind of like a Smallville scenario where he's like raised him on a farm with like a Ma and Pa Kent and all this stuff. And there's a lot of really cool stories that start in X-Force and Wolverine the X-Men. And then at one point, Remender leaves the company and Brian Michael Bendis comes in. And a lot of those storylines stop. And so I always really like the Evan clone story, and then it kind of doesn't go anywhere after a point, which is a darn shame. But in the Deathlock future, their biggest threat is Apocalypse, which is Evan. He is the biggest threat to them. And so you're going to see that pop up some more in Wolverine the X-Men, that there's this ongoing question: is he going to grow up to be a hero, or is he going to be the biggest threat the X-Men has ever faced? And they don't know. Like the future keeps changing, and they don't know which path it's going to take.
You know what? You keep going through it. I wonder if Genesis has shown up on Krakoa yet.
I think there's an ongoing debate on Krakoa about whether clones should be brought back to life or not, and someone keeps saying, "Why don't you bring Evan back?" And they keep refusing to bring Evan back. So at some point, he has died, which is stupid. We'll get to it. I really like the Apocalypse story in this, and a lot of this gets undone in the Krakoa part about how they're treating Apocalypse.
Which is funny because in House of X Powers of 10, I actually like how they treated Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Because you know, I remember they were like, "Well, Apocalypse, do you have any objections to this?" And he's like, "This affects me in no way. I've always wanted you all to be the superior species. So right now, I'm just getting what I want."
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm referring to is his motivations change in Krakoa about why he's doing everything he's doing.
Okay.
Whereas this, it kind of seems like, no, it's more of the death seeds affecting whoever gets infected. But we'll get to that. So this story, Deathlock, they end up killing the future guy, the father that is creating all the Deathlocks. So they think that they have prevented that future timeline now. But Deathlock sticks around because he wants to protect the world. So he's kind of hanging out with X-Force. He eventually becomes a full-time member, but right now he's just kind of hanging around.
He appears and like he helps them out with Dark Angel and all that. I'd say at this point he's kind of, I guess he's not an official member, you know, initiation sign here, but
yeah. He's not in the team picture, but he's there.
Yeah. For all intents and purposes, he is a part of the team at this point.
Yeah. And so the Deathlock in the 80s was a good person that was dealing with a psychotic, evil computer program telling him to, kill. And this Deathlock is the reverse. He's a serial killer who has been the computer Deathlock part is the pacifist. And so there's a constant debate going on with him about, if he lets the human side take over, he'll just kill everything. And so the robot side of him is trying to stop that.
And you know what's funny is as I'm reading, I feel like I'm reading more and more Deathlock every day, and I don't know why. But it just reminds me on like my introduction to Deathlock was actually the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I thought he was so lame.
Oh, they ruined that character so bad in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So the first it's like, oh, he's gonna be Deathlock, this will be cool, and then it's just like, oh, what did they do? Like he's like he should be like a decaying zombie that's half robot, half zombie, and they didn't even come close to that on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, and to me the funniest thing was like. To me, the funniest thing about that was with everything that they did, and this was before they came out with the Luke Cage TV show, and I wanted live action Luke Cage. With everything they ended up doing with them, I'm like, this could easily have been Luke Cage.
Yeah, it's
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only got Ghost Rider right, all right, and that wasn't even Dan Cash.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up an image real quick. Oh, I've got too many tabs open. Hold on one second.
You looking for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Deathlock?
No, I would not be. I would not pull that up on our screen. This is the Wolverine story where they introduced Deathlock. Tomorrow Dies Today is the name of it. So if anybody's curious, that is the story that reintroduces Deathlock to this world. So that's kind of like the first part of the story.
Gotcha.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that up there just for anybody's interested in reading the stuff. But yeah, so Deathlock Nation, that one ends. And then the next part, I think there's like a little one-off issue where Magneto hires them. And we got to be careful what words we choose. Magneto was a prisoner at a German camp, and so Magneto finds out that one of those guards that did stuff to him is still alive, and he can't bring himself to kill that guard, so that he has X-Force to do it. So Wolverine sets off to go kill that guy. So it's an interesting little story. It has nothing really to do with the rest of the plot, but it's just Wolverine doing Wolverine stuff, and the guard's like, one day someone's going to come for you just like you came for me.
Right.
The other thing, earlier I was saying how Brian Michael Bendis kills a lot of these storylines. The other thing that kills like all of the X-Men storylines that happens a few years after this is the death of Wolverine. It blows up everything.
So honestly, the death of Wolverine blows up everything before and after.
It is Wolverine. It's terrible. It almost kills the X-Men completely. That moment. It's just a dumb story that you rip out the heart of the X-Men, and then you've already killed off Cyclops and Jean also at that point, and it's like, and Xavier, and it's just like, what is X-Men at this point? But yeah, we're jumping way ahead. Let's move on to the next section, which is, I think we're getting into Dark Angel territory now.
Dark Angel is next, yes.
Okay, so this is split into 2 volumes in the books. It starts out with the Shadow King. He is he's taken over a nuclear base, and he's trying to get the soldiers to launch the nukes. And he's taken over members of X-Force, and he's really interested in fighting with Psylocke, because Psylocke's the one that imprisoned him for years inside her own brain. and he notices that Psylocke is hiding, that she has been having these telepathic sessions with Warren. And so Shaki's like, oh, that's what I need to attack. I need to attack Warren. So he starts setting Archangel free, and he makes Psylocke forget that all this happens. and so at the end of the story, Archangel has his chance to stop the guard from pushing the nuke button, and he could have talked him out of it. He just kills him instead. And then he tells her, like, oh, I didn't have a chance, you know. And so it's this dark turning point for Angel. From here, the Shadow King reports to a reporter that, hey, your boss, Angel, yeah, he's going around killing people. He killed a kid and all this stuff. And
right, because Warren owns the publication.
Yeah, he's rich. He owns all these different little companies. And
then, Warren's like, it's just slander. Shut it down.
Yeah, so one of the editors reports back to Warren that this is happening. So Warren goes and kills that editor, and now he's hunting down this reporter. And so it's clear at this point that Warren is out of control.
And what's funny is, like, so this is all the Dark Angel saga, but there are like 5 different story arcs in this saga.
Yeah. Because I forgot that a huge chunk of this is Age of Apocalypse stuff.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it totally slipped my mind that, oh yeah, a large part of this is in Age of Apocalypse.
Well, no, so, as soon as I got to Age of Apocalypse and I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, this is why it's his favorite.
Yeah, I love Age of Apocalypse, but that's actually not why this is my favorite story, because there's a lot of follow-ups to Age of Apocalypse that I do not like. This one does a lot of course correction and fixing the later stories of Age of Apocalypse, making it more interesting again. But yeah, so X-Force captures Warren, and they put him in a cell. They leave Deathlock to guard him, and they're like, we don't know how to fix him. We need someone who's an expert in Apocalypse stuff. So they go and break out Dark Beast out of prison. Dark Beast is a refugee from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Age of Apocalypse is a timeline where Xavier died and Apocalypse conquered the world.
Yeah, and it's explained rather well with as someone not knowing who Dark Beast was.
Yeah, and they make the Apocalypse stuff make super sense. Like the Celestials have life seeds and death seeds, and they put a death seed in you, you're going to become their agent of death and their future apocalypse. And then life seeds will bring life. So they need one of these life seeds to cure Warren. So they go to the Age of Apocalypse timeline. They have your typical heroes don't trust each other, they all fight each other moment when they meet the Age of Apocalypse X-Men. And Dark Beast, they break into his lab to get the life seed, and then
who was on the team? I know. So Jean led them, which is interesting because at this point Jean is dead.
Well, okay, hold up. There is a storyline after Age of Apocalypse called Return to Age of Apocalypse, where humanity has basically turned back to normal, and Sinister is still running around, and he brings Jean back to life with the Phoenix Force. So that's how Jean is back at the end of that story.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you haven't read that story, you'll be like, why is Jean alive again?
Right. I mean, I didn't even question it, honestly. I'm just
it's Age of Apocalypse. That's also where they introduce X-23, or the equivalent of her, is in Return to Age of Apocalypse.
But it was the Sunspot was one of them.
Sunspot, yeah. No, which one is? I get Sunstorm and Sunspot mixed up. Which one is it? Sunspot's the one on New Mutants, right?
Yes.
So Sunstorm is this guy, I think. Let me look it up. My gosh. I get these X-Men mixed up all the time. They have similar names.
Let's see.
Who? What is this guy's? Maybe I have the wrong name too. Isn't it Sunstorm?
I'm pretty sure it's just
No, because Sunspot is the wrong character. Sunspot. It's not Sunspot. It's It'll come to me in a minute. Anyhow,
he's a pretty important character later on.
She-Ro's his real name. It is Sunfire.
Sunfire.
Okay. Sunstorm is the Transformer. Okay. All right. To be Sun characters.
And then Sabretooth is also on the team, which is really cool.
Sabretooth and Wildchild are back. They were and so Sabretooth was temporarily part of the Exiles, which was a team led by Blink that was jumping from reality to reality, and Psylocke was on that team, which is why Psylocke and Sabretooth know each other. They keep making comments to each other like, oh, that's why Creed goes, oh, we could trust him. I know her. So yeah, there's
also on the team.
Yeah, Nightcrawler, Iceman, who betrays them. Got Gambit and Rogue, Magneto, and Silver Samurai is the team. What we find
didn't at some point didn't they come out with like an X-Men Age of Apocalypse with this team, and it's just like an ongoing with this team?
Yeah, so this storyline continues after this in its own Age of Apocalypse series. I have not read any of those, so I don't.
I'd like to just because of just because of who we find out who Apocalypse is.
Yeah, it's tempting. I know, like, they bring back a lot of the dead characters in that story. Like, I know Cyclops comes back and stuff. So I'm kind of like, I'm at a good spot of Age of Apocalypse. Do I need to?
Oh, Rick Remender wrote it. So
did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought someone else wrote it, but
no, it looks like Remender wrote it. So that, I mean, this might be safe to read.
I remember it only lasted like 13 issues or something, so it's not like a long story. But there's more Age of Apocalypse story to come in Uncanny X-Force. They're not done with that, since with Nightcrawler and all that. I hear. I feel like we're all over the place. The Age of Apocalypse X-Men need a life seed to. What we find out is that there's a new Apocalypse as Wolverine. That he's
because we thought that he was dead, but then it turns out
that he had gotten infected with one of the death seeds,
which is interesting because someone else notices that before they find out anything, they notice that Wolverine still has his hand, which is kind of like them hinting at the fact that Wolverine isn't actually dead in this universe.
Yeah, because at the end of Return of Age of Apocalypse, he was still running around, and then Jean's like, oh yeah, we went on this mission, we lost everybody, Wolverine, my lover died, and then you find, oh no, he's still alive, he's the new Apocalypse. And I think what's also interesting is his servant, I can't remember what they call her. It's Storm, but she's been converted to like his Ozymandias, which I think is pretty cool.
I mean, it's such a cool design too.
Yeah, and there's so many cool ideas. Like Return to Age of Apocalypse is a terrible comic book, and then Rick Remender comes in here and he's fixing everything. He's doing all these cool ideas, like their MODOK, which is a clone of Xavier, is a cool idea.
I was so confused by that.
Yeah, because the first one, even rereading, I'm like, who is this MODOK? And then finally he says, oh, this is our cloned Xavier. I'm like, oh, okay.
Please do not put Patrick Stewart in that makeup like in Quantumania. Don't make McAvoy do it.
So what ends up happening, we'll speed up a little bit. There's only one life seed, and so you have to decide who gets it. And at the end, Jean forces X-Force to return home with the life seed.
Like, Jeannie, I'm not abandoning you. It's like, but I'm not your genie, she says.
Yeah. It's fun because at this point, Jean is dead in the story, and Wolverine was there when she died during the Grant Morrison run. and so that's always screwed him up. And she's lost her Wolverine, and so there's this natural connection between the two. They return home to find out that Angel's free, the Four Horsemen are here, they've captured Deathlock, and Dark Beast is helping them. Yeah, this is the Apocalypse Wolverine here, and
Such a cool design.
Just to show you how evil he is, he immediately kills his own daughter.
Right? Yeah, dude.
Just like, yeah, I'm evil. So yeah, they return home. The X-Force just gets destroyed. they get their butts kicked, and they're escaping. And Psylocke's like, "No, I gotta save Warren. I'm staying."
And I think this is where it becomes book 2 for those who are reading the.
Yeah, and this is, to me, this is the Dark Angel saga. This is really where it starts. All that is kind of preamble, kind of like how in the Dark Phoenix story, all the Hellfire Club is kind of like the preamble to the actual story. So this is where the actual Dark Angel stuff starts. They go and recruit Apocalypse's son. That is their version of, I guess we can say, Holocaust on YouTube. I don't know. They bring him in. His mom is one of the original Four Horsemen from the 80s comic, and she's been keeping him hidden from Apocalypse. So Angel's like, "Oh yeah, we won't turn him evil, but they need him to do their plan." And what they are doing is they're taking the world and part of the life seed energy, and they're going to speed up the evolution. And the plan is to do it to the whole planet, but they're doing a test run. I think it's in Michigan or somewhere. And Angel just kills like a town of 3,000 people. And it's really tragic. He, like this little kid goes, "Are you superheroes?" And he's like, "Yeah, not anymore." And then he just wipes out the town.
Yeah.
And the little kid's like, "It's okay, Mom, they're superheroes." And then he just gets killed. And you're like, oh. So yeah. His plan is to convert Psylocke into his new Death, because the other Death gets killed by, I think, Deadpool or Wolverine. I can't remember who kills him.
I believe it was. It was Deadpool. Yeah, I believe
it was Deadpool because Wolverine gets severely injured at this point, and he's near death. Wolverine
is barely in this saga.
Yeah, because he's dying most of the saga, and the I can't remember if it was the cancer he got infected with, or it was the radiation. It was not allowing his body to heal, so he's unconscious. And
honestly, eventually Deadpool gets taken out. So really, this story arc is about Psylocke and Phantom X.
Yeah, there's a crazy scene where they capture. Let's see, he's not Death or War. Is he? I think he's Famine, the Civil War guy.
Yeah, Famine's the drummer.
They capture him and they let Deathlock torture him, and they don't show it. They just kind of describe it, and it's really gruesome.
No, honestly, no. My favorite, and this is why I remember that he's Famine, because of what he does to Blob.
Oh yeah, Blob from Age of Apocalypse is also running around at this point, and there's a scene where he lands on Phantom X, and it's really gross. And Deadpool's, he keeps making all these jokes about, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Phantom X." And
yeah.
So Wolverine, the Famine guy escapes, and he sets the thing on fire, and that wakes up Wolverine, him getting set on fire, and so he forces Famine to infect Blob with the his cancer drum beat.
Yeah. And then Famine says, you said that you wouldn't kill me if I did that. He says, "I did, and I won't." And then he cuts off his arms.
Yeah. He's like, "We're gonna take care of that drum beat thing right now." Somewhere around this point, Dark Beast takes Pestilence, and they get out of here. When they start sensing that things are going wrong, the Age of Apocalypse X-Men show up to help again. Nightcrawler is doing all kinds of stuff. He teleports I can't remember what Holocaust's new name is. Is it Nemesis, maybe, or something? He takes the helmet off, which releases all the radiation, and so Angel gets weakened by that.
Genocide. That was his name.
What was it?
Genocide.
Genocide. Yeah, so a lot more of the Age of Apocalypse X-Men die. They kill Wild Child. We failed to mention the other storyline that Gambit died. And does God, I've already forgot his name again. Sunfire, does he die in this part, or is it misremembering?
Sunfire does die because he's like absorbing all the Sunfire dies. He's absorbing like all of the heat and radiation, and they try to get to him before he does it, but he absorbs everything and dies. But he ends up saving the world because of it.
Yeah, he stops them from converting the whole world into this evolutionary thing. Iceman has gone evil. There's a lot of them fighting Iceman.
Well, and there's a lot of Icemen fighting them.
Yeah,
because like apparently, if you put Iceman underwater, then like he's just the most overpowered.
Oh yeah, he Sunfire sets him on fire, and you don't know if he's dead or not. He does show up again later. All right, so let's get to what I think is the best part of this comic is inside the world. It's Angel versus Phantom X and Psylocke.
Before we start this, I want to point out my favorite interaction, which is between Phantom X and Psylocke. And he's kind of been poking the bear the whole book, and so this is where like he just takes and he just stabs the bear, because he tells Psylocke, "You never loved him. You loved being needed."
Yeah, it's brutal.
And here's the thing, is like of course she denies it, but like there's still, he might be right.
Yeah, it's Phantom X is a jerk, but he's not necessarily wrong.
He's Wolverine.
Yeah, he so they have this brutal fight with Angel, and then it ends with Psylocke stabbing him with the life seed. And they're not sure what's going to happen. They believe it's going to kill Angel. And instead what it does is it creates I think of it as it's creating a new soul inside of him. So his old soul gets wiped away, and now he becomes a brand new creature.
Yeah,
and so
he doesn't know.
He doesn't know anything of his past life with Psylocke, but they share this last moment together that goes on for several pages, where you see what their life would have been, like their perfect life with Betsy and Warren.
This was so this was actually before he comes back. This is like as he's dying.
Yeah. As he's dying, these are his. She's projecting in his mind this final moment of them together.
When she can see it too. So like she's actually she's kind of lulled into it, kind of distracted.
They're both experiencing this possible future, and I love this whole sequence. Yeah. This is why this is my favorite story, is this sequence right here.
At this point, Phantom X is trying to get Psylocke out of there, but she's like, "No, just leave me here with him."
Yeah, I want to die with him. Everything's blowing up. They escape, and then Warren comes flying down. They're like, "Oh, he's still alive," and he's like, "I don't know who you are."
Yeah. Betsy's like, "I'm so glad," and kisses him.
I skipped a major part of the story. Phantom X sets the Apocalypse clone.
Yeah.
To fight Angel.
Yeah, and it's dope.
Yeah, Evan comes flying out as Genesis. They have this big fight. I love Evan. Evan's one of my favorite characters.
He's awesome. The reason that you didn't mention is because it ends up not working.
Yeah.
But it's still cool.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where this ends, because I don't know if you read the next issue. Is this where you stopped?
This is where I stopped. I stopped with, who are you, is basically where it stopped.
Okay. So I won't get too much into it, but the next issue is them dealing with the fallout from this, and they bring in Kitty and Beast, and they're like, "This is what we've been doing with this X-Force stuff, and we have this kid now. We want him to attend the school." And they're like, "Is this a good idea to bring Apocalypse into the school?" And so this part of the story now goes over to Wolverine and the X-Men, the Evan stuff. I think he does come back some later on.
So I was wondering what you meant, because whenever I was like, so when does it split off? And then you said it's whenever they drop Evan off. And I was, now
it's
I know
the
what
next
that
issue.
means. Okay.
So the next issue is really the kind of like the conclusion to all this. Phantom X is still, he's not sure he's done the right thing with Evan. Him and Wolverine have like this debate. We see that Dark Beast and Pestilence have left, and she is pregnant with Warren's kids. That storyline continues in the Uncanny Avengers, where they become the villains in that, the two kids that she's pregnant with. I think there's a lot of Kang shenanigans with all that. I don't like Uncanny Avengers as much as this stuff. I will tell you, this is the high point of the series. I mean, the rest of it's pretty good, but the next story is a lot of Captain Britain shenanigans.
I mean, are you ready for my hot take?
Yeah. What is your hot take?
This might be the best X-Men related storyline of all time.
It's awesome. It's really great.
I think it's better than Dark Phoenix. Like, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I would say so. This is that final fight between Psylocke, Phantom X, Evan, and Angel is incredible.
Yeah.
The build up to get to that, all the emotional choices that they've had to make, everything this team has been through. It's awesome. It's so good, and it makes me so mad that Rick Remender got ran off from Marvel. I'm like, he was such a good writer.
And then we got Battle of the Atom.
It's just, it's a shame.
Where, because at this point we've talked about it, 10 out of 10, not a question. We always talk about how Secret Wars is like the best place to stop when reading Marvel. If you're just reading X-Men, what do you think is a good place to stop? I would assume before then.
I think the ending of Wolverine the X-Men